No one in that house dared to cross the wealthy entrepreneur, Liam O'Connell Fitzgerald. Staff bowed their heads, guests feigned ignorance, and even his own family avoided confrontation. Until one night, Aoife Kelly, a recently arrived nanny, did something so unexpected, so outrageous, that the mansion's silence turned into embarrassment. But it wasn't that which truly rattled Liam. It was what came next, when Ayala, his own daughter, a baby who hadn't smiled in months, looked at that woman and reacted in a way no one there could explain. And in that instant, the most powerful man in the room realized he had just lost control of everything. Aoife gripped her backpack strap and looked at the gate. 10 feet of wrought iron, painted black, red cameras blinking in the corners, ivy covering the tall stone wall, towering Scots pines. A neighborhood in Foxrock where even the cobblestones looked swept with a ruler. No dogs barking, no children in the street, no radio playing, only the sound of her own steps on the cobblestone path. She smoothed her CV inside her bag. The paper was folded into quarters because the printer at the community center kept cutting off the margins, and there was no chance to print it again. The queue already had 15 people when she'd left. Her bag was peeling at the corner, but it was the only one with a good strap. Aoife ran her finger over the open seam and took a breath. 25 years old. From Clifton Co., Galway. 2 bus changes and a train ride to get there. And one thing no employer would ever take from her, her straight spine. She never bowed her head to the wealthy, the handsome, or the powerful. Her granny had taught her that before she even learned her ABCs. She pressed the doorbell. The sound echoed muffled within. The door opened. The man who appeared at the entrance was tall, with dark, slicked-back hair. A crisp white shirt, sleeves rolled up to the elbow. Handsome, yes, but in a way that repelled rather than invited. His eyes slid down to her shoes, traveled up her worn bag, lingered on her face. He didn't greet her, didn't offer a hand. There are rules here. Liam O'Connell Fitzgerald, 29, owner of that house, those walls, that silence. Aoife took a deep breath and shot back without blinking. Grand, I have mine too. He raised an eyebrow, measured her for 2 seconds. His lips pressed thin, then turned his back. He walked ahead down the wide corridor, his shoes clicking on the marble, without checking if she followed. Aoife walked behind at her own pace. She noticed the enormous paintings, the flowers in vases that must have cost her aunt's small flat rent for months. The scent of lavender and wood, everything too clean, too organized, too quiet. Ayala's room was on the 2nd floor. Aoife pushed the door open and found a 1.5-year-old girl sitting on a plush rug, surrounded by imported toys she didn't even touch. Stuffed animals lined up by size, wooden blocks in a clear box, English books on a low shelf. The wall had a printed routine with times for bottles, naps and baths, all color-coded, cameras in the corners, sensors on the door. A child's room planned by adults who never sat on the floor to play. Everything was impeccable. Ayala had big, serious brown eyes, eyes that didn't suit a 1.5-year-old. She didn't cry, didn't laugh, didn't reach out. She just sat there with her hands in her lap, staring into nothing. Aoife dropped her backpack on the floor, not approaching the child. She sat on the rug about 6 feet away, crossed her legs, and began to sing softly. A song her granny used to sing back in Clifton, off-key, full of misremembered words, with that gentle rhythm of someone rocking a baby in a cradle. Aoife's voice wasn't beautiful, it was hoarse, a little broken, but it was warm. Ayala slowly turned her face. Her eyes met Aoife's and stayed there, captivated, curious. An older staff member, in a grey uniform and white apron, stopped at the door, watching. After almost a minute, she whispered, "She hasn't looked at anyone like that in months." Aoife didn't stop singing, she just smiled. That very evening, the mansion filled up. Maeve and Seamus, Liam's parents, took their places at the head of the table with 2 other couples. Silverware gleamed, crystal glasses sparkled, linen napkins folded like fans, red wine breathing in a decanter. The conversation was low, polite, full of measured pauses, until Ayala's cries filled the upstairs and drifted down the staircase. Liam dropped his fork onto his plate. "Call the nanny." Aoife came downstairs with Ayala in her arms. The girl was red-faced, wet, her body warm. A slight fever was clear from touching her forehead. Aoife offered the bottle. Ayala turned her face away and pushed it with her hand. Liam shoved his chair back. The scrape of it echoed across the floor. He walked to Aoife and stopped in front of her, chin raised. "Do your job properly." Right there in the middle of the room, with guests watching, with his parents at the head of the table, he said it loudly, with relish, looking her straight in the eyes. Aifa pressed her lips together. The bottle trembled in her hand. She tried again. Ayala pushed with more force. Liam snatched the bottle from her hand with a yank. Ayala startled. Her tiny body tensed, her mouth opened, and her cry exploded. High-pitched, thin, desperate. "Calm down," Aif pleaded, her voice firm despite her icy hands. He turned to her. "You come from a council estate and think you can teach us something here?" The phrase silenced the room. Guests lowered their eyes. One of the women brought her napkin to her mouth. Maeve lifted her wineglass and took a long sip. Seamus continued cutting his meat, fork and knife scraping against the plate. Aif looked at Ayala, red, trembling, desperate, amidst people who couldn't even calm themselves. She snatched the bottle from Liam's hand and poured the entire contents onto his suit. The white liquid ran down the dark fabric, soaked his tie, dripped onto his Italian shoes, splashed onto the polished marble. No one moved. The guests froze, cutlery suspended in the air, mouths agape. Ayala, in Aifa's arms, turned her wet little face to her drenched father and guffawed, a loud, hearty belly laugh, the kind that makes your whole body shake. The first one that House had heard in months. The sound filled the room, traveled up the stairs, and echoed down the corridor. Liam stood rooted there, milk dripping from his tie, his daughter laughing in the arms of the woman he had just humiliated. Aifa adjusted Ayala on her hip and faced him head-on. "When you're ready to speak with respect, you'll find me in your daughter's room." She turned her back and ascended the stairs without hesitation. Liam didn't move. Wet suit, dirty shoes, pride spilled across the marble along with the milk. Maeve closed her eyes. Seamus slowly put down his cutlery. The guests exchanged glances. No one dared to open their mouth. Upstairs, Ayala was still laughing. The sound floated down the stairs and permeated the entire house. Liam clenched his teeth and vowed he would send that woman away the next morning. But tomorrow held something else entirely. Liam descended the stairs before 7, the dismissal speech forming in his head with each step. No staff member was going to throw milk on him in front of his family and continue sleeping under his roof. He didn't stop in the kitchen, didn't drink coffee, went straight to Ayala's room. The door was ajar, the same soft, hoarse, off-key song from yesterday. He pushed the door open. Aifa was on the rug with Ayala on her lap. The girl held a pink plastic spoon and tapped it against an empty baby food pot. Every time it made a sound, Aif's eyes widened in exaggerated surprise, and Ayala laughed. She laughed and tapped again. A spoon and a pot, nothing more. The speech choked in his throat. "Good morning," Aifa said, without taking her eyes off the girl. She drank the whole bottle today, slept through the night, woke up at 6:30 wanting to play. Liam stood there for 3 seconds, hand on the doorknob, watching his daughter laugh so freely. He went downstairs to the living room and called for Mrs. Finnegan. The housekeeper appeared, drying her hands on her apron, her face already braced for bad news. "Find another nanny." Mrs. Finnegan hesitated. "Mr. Fitzgerald, the girl is different since yesterday. She ate everything, slept the whole night, woke up in good spirits. That hasn't happened in weeks. Find another." Mrs. Finnegan nodded and left without another word. Half an hour later, a new staff member entered the room. A young woman, trained, uniformed. Aifa didn't argue. She picked up her backpack, went downstairs, and sat on the stone bench in the garden. The morning sun warmed her face. She sat there with her backpack on her lap, looking at the trees. Upstairs, Ayala stared at the new woman. She studied the different face, the different hands, the different way she moved. The staff member offered the bottle with a rehearsed smile. Ayala pushed it away. She offered a stuffed animal. Ayala turned her body. The woman tried to pick her up. Ayala threw herself back and screamed. The scream was different from the cry of the previous night. Deeper, more profound. A cry of someone searching for something and not finding it. Ayala stretched her arms towards the door, her face contorted, her body stiff, refusing comfort, toys, food. The staff member tried everything. Nothing worked. Liam listened from his study, squeezing the pen between his fingers until the plastic creaked. 10 minutes, 15, 20. The scream grew hoarser, more tired, but it didn't stop. Mrs. Finnegan appeared at the study door. "The girl won't take to anyone, sir." The pen twirled between his fingers. "The other young woman is downstairs, in the garden." He opened and closed his left hand, squeezing the air. Then, with a strangled voice, "Call her." Aifa ascended without haste, entered the room, bent down, and opened her arms. Ayala threw herself into her lap with a force that didn't match her tiny body. She buried her face in Aife's neck, gripped the collar of her blouse with both fists, and the scream turned into a sob. The sob turned into a trembling sigh. The sigh turned into calm. Within minutes, she fell asleep. Liam appeared at the door. Ayufe slowly rocked her hand on Ayala's back. "She chose," Ayufe said, her voice low, without triumph. "It wasn't me." He gripped the doorknob and left without another word. Ayufe stayed because Ayala had decided for everyone, and the decision of a 1.5-year-old girl weighed more than his pride, more than the house's hierarchy, more than any schedule taped to the wall. And Ayufe didn't take advantage, didn't rub it in anyone's face, didn't change her tone. She returned to the room, changed Ayala, organized the schedule, sang at bath time, made silly faces during purees. She worked. The days passed. Ayufe took Ayala to the garden in the mornings. She invented games with leaves, with water, with stones. The girl began to laugh more, sleep better, eat without fuss. The cook mentioned it to Mrs. Finnegan, who mentioned it to the driver, who mentioned it to the gardener. Liam also noticed, and each improvement was like a splinter under his nail. He'd pass through the corridor and hear Ayufe singing. He'd enter the room and find toys scattered, clothes changed at odd hours, naps delayed by 20 minutes. Everything was wrong according to the schedule, but it was working for the girl. One morning, he stopped at the room's doorway. "She needs routine." Ayufe turned with Ayala on her hip. The girl was distractedly chewing on the corner of a stuffed animal. "She needs to feel grounded, not to be a display. I'm talking about discipline, and I'm talking about affection. You can have both." Liam opened his mouth to retort. Ayala stretched her hand towards him and made a sound, a choked da, half attempt, half plea. Her chubby little hand opened and closed in the air. Ayufe looked at the girl, then at him. Liam didn't move, shoulders rigid, hands shoved into his pockets, Ayala's hand still outstretched in the air. He turned and left down the corridor, his steps hard on the marble. Ayufe adjusted the girl in her lap. "Your da is complicated, you know?" Ayala grabbed the collar of her blouse and buried her face in Ayufe's neck. Downstairs, in his study, Liam rested his hands on the mahogany desk. From the outside, anyone would say he didn't care. He didn't enter the room, didn't hold his daughter, didn't sing, didn't play, didn't sit on the floor. But he knew Ayala preferred the gray stuffed animal to the brown, that she slept better with rain sounds on the app, that she got agitated with bright light, and rubbed her left eye when she was sleepy. He knew everything, he just didn't know how to get close. In the following weeks, the arguments between Ayufe and Liam became a strange custom in that mansion. In the corridor because of an open window, in the kitchen because of the baby food temperature, at the bedroom door because of a toy on the floor. The staff had already developed an instinct. When they heard the footsteps of the two approaching the same room, they found a task on another floor. But one thing changed amid the discussions, so slowly that neither of them noticed. Ayufe learned that Liam's silence when he was angry was dry, mouth tightly shut, firm steps, a slammed door. When he was sad, it was different. He'd stop in some corner of the house, shoulders slightly slumped, eyes fixed on a non-existent point. Liam learned that Ayufe confronted him in two ways. When she came because she was right, her chin would rise and her voice would be clear. When she came from exhaustion, her voice was the same, but her hands trembled. Barefoot on the grass again, Liam said one Wednesday afternoon on the veranda. The winter sun cast a shallow light, and tree shadows spread across the lawn. Ayufe didn't even lift her head. She was on the garden ground with Ayala, both barefoot in the damp earth. The girl crushed dry leaves between her fingers and released them into the air, laughing each time the tiny pieces fell onto her lap. A child needs to be grounded. She needs shoes. When she wants shoes, she'll ask. She's 1.5. She doesn't ask for anything. She does too. It's you who isn't listening. Liam opened his mouth, closed it, turned his back, and entered the house. The glass door slid shut behind him. Ayufe wiped the earth from Ayala's hands. The girl lifted her face and offered a handful of crushed leaves. Ayufe accepted, making an exaggerated funny face. As much as they argued, Ayufe couldn't ignore his contradictions. Liam could spend the entire day away from his daughter's room, but he knew exactly what she ate for breakfast, what time she slept, how many times she woke at night, if Tuesday's fever had returned. He'd ask Mrs. Finnegan in the corridor, check with the cook, review the crib monitor in the dead of night, the bluish glow of his phone in the dark study, volume low, his finger adjusting the camera's angle. Back in Clifton, a present father was one who held you close, who sang off-key, who sat on the dirty floor, who carried you on his shoulders. A father who cared from a distance was an absent father with a fixed address. Ayufe couldn't place Liam anywhere she knew. One Thursday, it rained heavily. A thick, Irish rain, the kind that clogs drains and makes the lights flicker. The second-floor windows rattled with the wind. Ayala woke up screaming at 2 in the morning. Awifa jumped out of bed and opened the room door. Liam was already there, barefoot, hair mussed from the pillow, an old t-shirt, looking like he'd sprung out of bed in a hurry. No pretense, nothing. "What's her temperature?" The words came out squeezed between his teeth. "Calm down, let me see. 38.5, a fever, nothing serious." Awifa quickly prepared, lowered the light, picked Ayala up. The girl was sobbing, her body trembling, tiny fingers clutching her blouse. Awifa sang softly, almost a murmur, swaying from side to side slowly, stroking Ayala's back in a rhythm that matched the song. Liam stayed by the wall. He didn't command, didn't criticize, didn't try to take the girl. He watched Awifa calm his daughter with a natural ease he lacked. His eyes moved from Ayala to Awifa and back again. And on that perpetually controlled face, something cracked. The doctor arrived in 40 minutes. "A mild virus antipyretics, rest." He left. Ayala fell asleep in Awifa's arms. The two remained in the room. Awifa tidied the blanket in the cot. Liam had sunk into the armchair. His t-shirt sleeve was rolled up haphazardly. Sleep-reddened eyes fixed on his daughter. "Awif." She turned slowly, waiting. He ran a hand over his face, scratched the back of his neck, hesitated. "Do you think a small child notices when someone is trying, even if they're getting everything wrong?" The question caught Awifa off guard. She had to count the tiles on the wall not to show how much it affected her. Small children notice almost everything, especially who stays close. He slowly nodded and left on tiptoes. Awifa stayed, listening to his footsteps fade. The rain continued to beat against the window. Ayala slept, eyes moist, left hand fisted, breathing softly. Later, passing through the corridor, she saw Liam by the entrance window. The rain streamed down the glass, casting long shadows on the floor. The faint light highlighted his face as he gazed outside. By his slumped shoulders and heavy breathing, it was obvious he carried a great worry. Aif wanted to ask what it was, bit her tongue, and went downstairs without asking. Lying in her small staff room, she turned on her side. In her head, two men alternated, the Liam of the dinner, who humiliated with relish in front of others, and the Liam of Ayala's room, who asked with a raw voice if his daughter noticed he was trying. The same face, two people, and that just didn't add up. The change came from attrition. There was no beautiful turning point. It came in the repetition of days, in the accumulation of brushes and silences within that overly large house. Awif confronted Liam when she felt it necessary. He retorted with the stubbornness of someone who grew up believing that to yield was to lose. But in the midst of their arguments, pauses appeared that hadn't existed before. Glances that lingered an extra second, unnecessary questions. Small gestures that both pretended not to notice. "She likes mashed banana with oats," Awifa said one morning, stirring Ayala's baby food in the kitchen. The smell of ripe banana spread through the room. Liam was at the counter on the other side, phone in hand, half a mug of coffee. "I know." "You do?" I asked the cook to note down what she takes best. "Banana with oats is at the top." Awifa stopped stirring. The spoon hung suspended in the air. "For someone who doesn't enter the room, you know quite a lot, sir." He put his phone in his pocket and said softly, "I go into her room in the middle of the night, when no one sees." His face changed. It wasn't anger. Afi already knew his anger. It was the face of someone who'd had a bandage ripped off without warning. Does the time of day make a difference? Aif rested the spoon on the plate's edge. It does. During the day, she's awake. A child needs to see her father with his eyes open, not just in the dark. She left the kitchen without waiting for a reply. That week, Fionnuala Devlin began to frequent the house. Fiancé of Cillian, Liam's older brother. Slender, with straight hair parted down the middle, clothes that seemed sewn to her body, she spoke softly, her smile rehearsed, moving with an economy of gestures that gave the impression every movement was calculated. Even her expensive floral perfume seemed chosen to communicate soft power. Aif noticed Fionnuala's gaze on her second visit. They crossed paths in the second-floor corridor. Fionnuala looked Afi up and down shoes, trousers, blouse, hair, then turned away, without saying good morning, without changing her expression, without quickening her pace. Aif kept walking, and a cold sensation traveled down her neck. She knew that look. It was the look of a woman who catalogues and discards in the same gesture. At Sunday lunch, family gathered. Fionnuala made her first move. "Perhaps it would be good to advise the young woman about her tone of voice," she said, looking at Maeve. Excessive affection with the child can create dependency. Ife was passing with the bottle. She stopped. Ayala is a baby, not someone from whom profit or results are expected. Maeve dropped her fork. Siamus didn't even raise his eyes. Cillian disguised his discomfort by looking at a very interesting stain on the tablecloth. Liam lifted his face from his plate. Afe's results with the girl speak for themselves. A few words, no explanation. Fionnuala offered a sickly smile, said nothing more, and returned to her meal. In the corridor, Aife found him later. "Were you defending me, sir, or protecting the only person who gets your daughter to sleep?" Liam leaned his shoulder against the wall. The two can exist together. Aife rolled her eyes and kept walking, but things were changing, without agreement, without warning, without permission. She began to notice what she shouldn't. The way his voice softened when Ayala woke up startled. The same voice that demanded results on the phone became gentle, almost unrecognizable. In the glance that escaped him when he saw Aife on the bedroom floor, hair tied up any old way, oblivious to everything, he would linger 2 seconds longer at the door, and Aife would feel the warmth on the back of her neck, knowing she was being watched. He also noticed too much. Her dimples when she laughed, the firmness with which she held Ayala, the speed with which she replied, always with a sharp, precise phrase. One afternoon, after dinner, Aife heard Liam on the phone in his study. His voice was hard, dry, professional. He hung up and went up to Ayala's room. The girl was agitated. Liam knelt, adjusted the stuffed animal in her arm, and made a soft, awkward, shushing sound, his large hand covering the girl's entire back. The voice on the phone and the shushing voice didn't seem to belong to the same person. Aife watched from the door and looked away before he saw her. On a sunny afternoon, Ayala tripped over a root in the garden and almost fell face first onto the grass. Aife made such an absurd face, wide eyes, crooked mouth, tongue sticking out, that the girl guffawed instead of crying. She guffawed so much that she fell back sitting and kept laughing, slapping her hands on the grass. Liam, on the terrace above, with his coffee mug, smiled faintly. Aife looked up and saw that smile coming from him, from that face. It stirred more within her than any argument ever could. Anger is simple. Anger has form, has a name. What comes after does not. Aife already knew Liam too well for her own good. She knew his schedule, his habits, his tics. That he drank black coffee without sugar and left his mug in the same spot on the counter. That he scratched the back of his neck when he was nervous. She knew when his irritation was real and when it was a mask. She knew when his silence was pride and when it was pain. Liam knew things about her too. That she wrinkled her nose before saying something difficult. That she sang louder when she was anxious. That she rubbed her hands on her trousers when holding back strong emotion. They still argued, but the arguments had changed address. They were no longer about baby bottles, they were about the world. "Do you think this house works?" Aife asked one night, folding Ayala's clothes on the dresser. The girl slept in her cot, the grey stuffed animal clutched to her chest. Liam stood in the doorway, tie loose. "Works for whom? For your daughter?" "No, she has everything. Everything money can buy. It's not the same." He remained silent. Aife continued folding, smoothing the fabric to iron out the creases. The surrounding family didn't help. Maeve treated her son with the efficiency of someone demanding a report. Seamus spoke to him in the tone of someone evaluating a disappointing employee. Cillian held the position of favorite son, without needing to do anything. It was enough to have been born first, enough to nod at the right time. Liam commanded everything in that house and belonged nowhere. Aife saw it all. She saw his posture stiffen when Maeve compared her two sons at the dinner table. "Cillian always had an easier way with people," she'd say. Liam would take a sip of wine and not respond, but his body would shoulders tense, hand clenching the stem of his glass. Ayala continued unwittingly bringing the two together. She was already reaching for Liam more often. He'd be awkward when he picked her up, arm a little stiff, hand clumsy on her back. But he'd hold her. He'd get the nappy position wrong, forget the extra change of clothes, take a while to distinguish between a cry of hunger and a cry of sleep. Aife watched from a distance, letting him make mistakes. No one learned to be a father by reading instructions on a wall. One afternoon, returning from the laundry room, she saw Liam at the bedroom door, watching Ayala sleep. He wasn't moving. He didn't move for about 5 minutes. His breathing controlled, eyes fixed on the girl's face. Then he tiptoed away. Aife saw from the end of the corridor and leaned her hand against the wall, needing support. A man who stands for 5 minutes watching his daughter sleep is not a man who doesn't care. He is a man afraid of spoiling the only good thing he has. That same week, Fionnuala called Aufe to the side drawing room. Cream-colored walls, velvet sofa, a porcelain tea set that must have cost 3 months' salary. The room smelled of jasmine and old leather, a room Aufe almost never set foot in, and Fionnuala knew it. Inviting her, there was marking territory. Fionnuala closed the door, crossed her legs, served the tea with precise movements. The cup made a tiny clink on the saucer as she offered it. Aufe accepted the cup and held it with both hands, feeling the warmth of the porcelain. Aufe, may I be frank? You may. Be careful not to confuse professional space with emotional space. It happens a lot with staff in houses like this. The family is kind, the child gets attached, and the young woman starts to believe she's part of something that isn't hers. Aufe placed the cup on the table without drinking. The tea cooled in the untouched cup. Are you telling me to remember my place? I'm telling you to be aware of it. My place is next to Ayala. No one else in this house wanted that place. Fionnuala lost her composure and almost stopped smiling. You could see she was nervous by the way she gripped the cup. And you, madam, Aufe continued. Are you entering this family for love or for the name? Fionnuala stopped drinking her tea instantly. She stared fixedly at Aufe. Not with anger. She seemed to be planning something. She mentally filed away that offense for future revenge. Be careful then, Aufe. You too, madam. Aufe stood up and left. On the stairs, her legs felt heavy. Each step was a struggle, not from fear of Fionnuala, but from the exhaustion of having to prove every single day that she deserved to breathe in that house. At dinner, Maeve brought up the subject. Aufe was passing with the bottle just as Maeve spoke, drawing everyone's attention at the table. Staff don't put themselves on the same level as family, she said loudly, looking at her plate, as if Aufe were something to be commented upon, not someone to be spoken to. Aife's face burned. She tightened her grip on the bottle and kept walking. Liam spoke before she could leave. Dignity doesn't depend on social class, mother, and if there's anyone in this house who has always respected their space and never caused problems, it's Aife. Maeve stared at her son with a look of disapproval. Sam slapped his palm on the table. The crystal of the glasses trembled. Chilian looked at his own plate. Fionnuala merely observed, storing away every word. Aife went up the stairs, holding the handrail with both hands, put Ayala in the cot, and collapsed into the armchair. He had defended her in front of his mother, with all the consequences. An arrogant man who knows how to be protective is more dangerous than a man who is clearly evil. From the bad man, you simply run, but the other one stays in your head and leaves you anxious when you're alone. Aife understood the real scale of the problem one Wednesday morning. Ayala had gone to sleep late, colic, crying that wouldn't stop. Aife stayed with her until almost midnight. When the girl finally dozed off, she went down to the kitchen to get water. Her throat was dry from so much singing. She came down the stairs barefoot, slippers in hand not to make noise. She pushed open the kitchen door and found Liam. He was at the marble counter, barefoot, holding a mug of coffee that, by the smell, had been cold for ages. An old t-shirt, hair falling across his forehead, deep shadows under his eyes. The two looked at each other. Liam raised his mug in a minimal gesture, half greeting, half surrender. What are you doing awake? The same thing as you, sir. The corner of his mouth twitched up and down quickly, almost sadly. Aife picked up a glass, filled it with water, and stood at the counter on the other side. 6 feet between them, the marble island in the middle, the yellow light from the corridor streaming through the door. They talked about Ayala, her colic, the fever from 2 days ago. Maeve's habit of calling the pediatrician every time she sneezed, the generator's noise, the gardener who pruned the wrong tree, things about the house that didn't matter at all, and gave security precisely because they didn't matter. Then the conversation changed direction. This house is too big, Aife said, tracing the rim of her glass with her finger. All houses are too big when there aren't real people inside. Aife looked at him. He looked at the cold coffee. The wall clock made a soft tick. Why do you never talk about Ayala's mother? The question came out low. Aife hadn't planned it. It simply slipped out, prompted by all the nights spent staring at the ceiling of her staff room, piecing together things that didn't fit. Liam raised his eyes. Because it's not simple. Nothing here is. His left thumb tapped against the side of the mug in a low rhythm. One day I'll tell you. Promise? I promise. Aife put the glass in the sink, turned at the door. Good night, Liam. The first time without sir. His name in the middle of that dark kitchen. He noticed. She noticed that he noticed. She went up the stairs. In the morning, everything returned to normal. Arguments, Ironies. But the kitchen in the dead of night was kept in a place no one else knew. The following days brought different movements. Dara Lynch, the family solicitor, began to appear frequently, always in a grey suit, always with the same leather briefcase, always locked in the study with Seamus or Cillian. Doors closed, muffled voices. When he left, no one commented. Fionnuala was more attentive, observing conversations at lunch, noting who spoke to whom. Cillian, who already spoke little, became mute near Ayala. When the girl cried in the next room, he'd get up and leave, not to help, but to distance himself. Aif noticed everything. She didn't understand what it meant. She felt that house hid more than it showed. Meanwhile, the feeling between her and Liam grew through small moments. They were brushes in the narrow corridor, his arm passing too close to her shoulder, exchanges of glances while they cared for Ayala, attempts at deeper conversations on nights when the girl took a long time to sleep. Liam watched Aife in secret. Even with her back turned, she sensed when he was nearby the shiver on her skin and her nervousness. They tried to pretend nothing was happening, but Aife's body betrayed her. Her stomach tightened, her skin tingled, her breath caught every time he came too close. One Saturday morning, a friend of Fionnuala's came for coffee, blonde, tanned, gold bracelets, the two in the living room, when Aif passed with Ayala in her arms. The woman turned to Fionnuala without lowering her voice. These types of simple girls end up getting attached to other people's houses, don't they? Fionnuala took a sip and gave a thin smile. She didn't correct her. Aif stopped. Blood rushed to her face so quickly that her ears buzzed. Liam slowly descended the stairs, stopping in front of the two women. If anyone in this house is acting without class, it's not the woman who spends her day looking after the most important person living here. The friend's eyes widened. Fionnuala's smile died. Liam finished, turned his back, and went upstairs. That night, Aife went out to the garden after putting Ayala to sleep. She needed air. She sat on the stone bench near the large trees. The stars were faint, city light pollution from Dublin, but the air was fresh, and crickets chirped in the background. Liam appeared, sat beside her, didn't ask permission. "Why do you do that?" Aife asked, looking straight ahead. "Do what? Defend you?" The stone bench was cold. Aife felt the coolness on her legs. "Because I can't stand to see injustice in my own home. You've been unjust to me too. I know." The wind swayed the branches. On the second floor, a light switched on and off. His hand lightly touched hers. His fingers brushed the back of Aife's hand. A graze. It could have been by accident. It could have been on purpose. Aife didn't withdraw her hand. After that night, Aife began to flee. She woke up earlier, went downstairs before him. She stayed in Ayala's room until the last possible moment. Not because what she felt was small, but because it was too big for a woman from Clifton, who knew by heart the story of every neighbor who gambled on a man from another world and ended up without a home and without a name. The daughter of Mrs. Gallagher, who fell for her boss and was left with 3 children and no address. The neighbor's cousin, who believed in promises whispered in the dark and woke up one Sunday with her suitcase on the pavement. Liam wasn't just rich, he was a cog in a family machine that quietly crushed people. Aife saw the machine working every day, in Maeve's face, in Fionnuala's smile, in Seamus's indifference. But he didn't back down. On the contrary, he appeared in Ayala's room with transparent excuses. "I came to get the blanket." Mrs. Finnegan asked if the girl had eaten. The monitor froze. Excuses made up on the spot that both knew were lies, and no one pointed it out. His voice lowered when he spoke to Aife. He didn't command, he asked. He didn't order, he suggested. His hands became restless near her, opening and closing, adjusting his sleeve, running through his hair. Aife saw every gesture and hated feeling that she liked it all too much. Ayala accelerated everything without knowing it. She already looked for them both together. If Aif was in the room and Liam appeared, Ayala would break into a smile and stretch out her little arms, alternating between one and the other. If Liam picked her up and Aif left, the girl would turn her entire body, searching. There, a family was forming out of nothing, without following rules and without the approval of those around them. One Tuesday afternoon, Aife was sorting out little dresses on Ayala's bed when the door opened without warning. Fionnuala entered, closing it behind her. Her heels made 2 dry clicks on the floor. "I'll be direct." Aife dropped the pink dress. "Go ahead." Liam is reacting to the chaos of this house. He doesn't feel anything real. It's transference, loneliness, the confusion of a man who doesn't know how to deal with what happened. "You've come to explain what he feels? I've come to spare you humiliation." Men from his world don't choose women from yours to stay with. They choose them for distraction. And women from your world choose marriage or a contract. Fionnuala's face hardened instantly. Liam pushed the door open at that moment. Get out of here, Fionnuala. Liam, His voice was dry, curt, unappealing. Fionnuala straightened her shoulders, smoothed her skirt, and left. Her heel clicked in the corridor, her face red. Liam stood at the door, Aif in the middle of the room. You don't have to do this. Do what? Pick fights with your whole family because of me? He took a step inside. No one will humiliate you under the same roof as me. Alfa's legs weakened, not from the phrase, but from the certainty in his voice. She picked up the little dress from the bed and folded it slowly, needing something to do with her hands. I can defend myself. I know, but you don't have to anymore. In the cot, Ayala murmured softly and fell back asleep. That night, Aifa tried to maintain distance. She fed Ayala, bathed her, changed her, put her to sleep. Everything on autopilot, her head spinning, her stomach churning. When she left the room with the empty bottle, the east corridor was dark. Liam was there, waiting by the wall. The bedroom light illuminated half his face. The other half remained in shadow. Awif, he said, low, hoarse. She stopped. Her feet stuck to the floor. He walked towards her, slowly, 1 step, 2, stopping before he got too close. I'm tired of pretending this doesn't exist. This could destroy us, your family, I know. He came closer. Aufe felt the heat coming from his body, the scent of cologne mixed with coffee, his altered breathing. The worst is to keep pretending nothing is worth the risk. When he kissed her, Aifa dropped the bottle to the floor and grabbed the collar of his shirt with both hands. She responded with the same force, the same urgency, everything she had held back in those weeks. A kiss from people who had held back for too long. When he let go, everything came rushing out. When they pulled apart, both were breathing deeply, faces still close. This is madness, Aif said, her voice failing. Liam ran his thumb over her cheek. Slowly, compared to what I feel when I see someone attack you, this is nothing. Aif rested her forehead on his chest. 3 seconds. She felt his heart beating strongly beneath his shirt. She pulled away, tucked her hair behind her ear, and went downstairs. The bottle remained on the corridor floor. Liam stood there in the dark. The choice between his family and Aife had already been made before the question. After the kiss, Aife tried to retreat. She woke before the sun, went down the service stairs, held her breath when she heard his footsteps in the corridor. Not out of fear of him, but fear of herself. She knew that in that game, she was the easiest piece to discard. She had seen it happen to the mother of a school friend, a woman who cleaned wealthy houses for 12 years. She believed the family liked her, and one December day discovered that liking and valuing are different things. The redundancy check arrived via the driver. The mistress didn't even come down to say goodbye. Ayala was different, more relaxed, noisier. She was already calling Awif Naois. And every time that crooked little word came out of her mouth, Aifa smiled uncontrollably. The girl sought Liam more often, tugged at his trouser leg, rested her head on his knee when he sat down. The three of them functioned together, and this made the entire house uncomfortable. Dara Lynch suggested that Ayala's routine needed clearer restrictions for staff, access times, shift change protocols. Maeve supported it. Fionnuala let slip at breakfast that Aife had excessive influence over the child and over Liam. Cillian remained silent, his eyes moving from one side of the table to the other. The more the family tried to humiliate or distance Aif, the more Liam appeared to defend her. One afternoon, while Liam was out, Maeve called Aifa to the main drawing room. Dark velvet sofa, unlit fireplace, gold-framed paintings, the scent of expensive flowers. The room where Aife never sat, except to clean. Entering, there was already a message. Sit, Aife. Aife sat on the edge of the sofa, back straight, hands in her lap. The velvet fabric was soft beneath her legs, soft and strange, because it wasn't her place, and both of them knew it. Maeve remained standing, impeccable hair, pearl necklace, silk blouse. She looked down at Aife, chin raised, arms crossed in front of her body. I'll be brief. You are paid to look after the girl, not to occupy spaces that don't belong to you. I care for Ayala with my heart, Mrs. Fitzgerald. A child recognizes true care. Maeve spoke more softly and stared at Aife with malice. Are you using the baby to get close to my son? Aif clenched her hands so tightly that her nails marked her skin. That accusation hurt more than any insult, because it turned her affection for the baby into pure self-interest. She stood up with difficulty, feeling her body heavy, but faced the situation on her feet. I would never use a child for anything. Never. Then act like staff. The door opened, and Liam entered with his car keys in hand, his blazer tossed over his arm. As he looked at his mother and Aoife, his face instantly hardened. "What's going on?" "A chat with a girl," Maeve said. "I heard you from outside, Mother." Liam dropped the keys on the table. "I won't tolerate Aoife being treated this way. You're losing yourself, Liam." "I'm finding myself. Perhaps that's what bothers you." Seamus appeared at the door, Cillian behind him. "What's going on?" Seamus asked. "Is your son throwing the family's reputation away because of a nanny?" Maeve replied. And the way she uttered the word nanny was with such contempt, it sounded like an insult. Liam turned to his father and said, very harshly, "This woman takes care of your granddaughter better than anyone in this house ever has. If that's throwing away reputation, then that reputation isn't worth much." Everyone fell silent. Aoife left, climbing the stairs, gathering strength from where she had none, picked up Ayala, and sat in the armchair. She hugged the girl against her chest, her cheek against Ayala's fine hair. Later, when the girl fell asleep, Liam appeared at the door, tie loose, hair messy from running his hands through it. "Stop picking fights because of me." Aoife's voice was choked. He entered and took her hand, his fingers wrapped around hers with care. "I'm not picking fights. I'm stopping things that should never have been allowed to happen. You know what you're risking?" "I do. And I know more and more what's worth it." A tear fell before Aoife could stop it. She tried to stand up. He held her hand more firmly, not with force, but with intention. And when he kissed her, slowly, forehead to hers first, hand holding her face with a delicacy that contradicted every day of arrogance, Aoife knew there was no turning back. Fionnuala decided to attack at the most cruel point, Aoife's continued presence with Ayala. Until then, the moves had been wrapped in politeness. Now, it was open warfare. For a woman who had built every step of her life on calculation and appearances, watching Liam publicly ally himself with the nanny was worse than losing. It was becoming irrelevant, and Fionnuala knew she wasn't fighting a common rival. She was fighting a woman. Liam chose anew every single day in front of everyone. The explosion came at a dinner. Seamus was hosting 2 foreign investors. The table was impeccable, the family smiling, the house functioning as a showpiece. Aoife stayed with Ayala upstairs. Even so, Fionnuala dragged her name to the table. "Some staff forget their place when the family is too generous," she said between forkfuls, glancing towards the corridor. Her voice was soft, but venomous beneath. Aoife, precisely at that moment, passed through the kitchen door with the bottle, then stopped. She felt the eyes of the entire table turn to her, the investors curious, Seamus tense, Maeve immobile. True generosity doesn't humiliate those who work. The room froze. One of the investors paused with his fork halfway to his mouth. Fionnuala offered that false smile. She let the next sentence out slowly, savoring each word. "Clever women of simple origin know exactly how to get close to vulnerable men." Aoife felt her face ablaze. It wasn't a provocation. It was a planned public blow, with witnesses. Fionnuala wanted the investors to hear. She wanted the phrase glued to Aoife's image forever. And worse, she wanted Aoife to lose her composure right there in front of everyone to confirm the portrait of a hysterical woman she'd been painting for weeks. Liam stood up, his chair scraping on the floor. All eyes turned to him. He didn't shout. He spoke slowly, each word heavy. "Aoife is more dignified than all of you put together. The ones who truly live calculating how to get ahead in life are you, not her, who cares for Ayala with dedication and without ulterior motives." Cillian was about to speak, but Liam silenced him with just a firm look. "It was enough. This is a scandal," Maeve said, her voice trembling. "A scandal is the ease with which this family crushes anyone who doesn't carry the right surname." The investors exchanged quick glances. Seamus turned red from his neck to his forehead. After the guests left, embarrassed and quickly, the confrontation exploded. Seamus called Liam ungrateful. Maeve said he was destroying generations of building. Cillian stood in a corner, his face cold. Fionnuala no longer hid her anger. Lips trembling, hands gripping the back of her chair, Liam listened to everything standing. He didn't interrupt, didn't retort. He let each one speak. When they finished, he said just one word, "Done," and went upstairs. Aoife was in the room, sitting on the floor beside the cot. The girl was asleep. Liam entered and closed the door. "You shouldn't have done that. I can't watch them do that to you anymore. You don't need to risk everything." He approached, held her face with both hands. "It's not because of you. It's with you. It's alongside you. I've never known so clearly whose side I want to be on." Aoife closed her eyes, tears falling. "Your family. the company, the name. None of those things are worth more than seeing you whole. She rested her head on his chest and cried. That night, passing through the corridor, Aoife heard muffled voices from the study. Liam, Cillian, and Dara Lynch. The walls were thin enough. Preserve the girl, avoid exposure, don't repeat the same mistakes. Aoife's body prickled from her feet to the back of her neck. The words didn't make complete sense, but the tone did. The tone of people hiding something serious. The tone of people afraid of being discovered. Back in her small room, she sat on the edge of the narrow bed. The bedspread was thin, the pillow smelled of cheap fabric softener. On the other side of the wall, the Fitzgerald house continued to operate. Perfect on the outside, rotten on the inside. Aoife looked at the ceiling and made the hardest decision, to leave. Not from lack of love, but from an excess of it, because her presence was cracking everything around Liam, and if she stayed, he would lose more than money or his name. He would lose the chance to fix anything with his family. When she told him, she expected him to accept, to agree it was for the best, to make that rational man's face she already knew. He looked into her eyes and said, "If you leave trying to save me, you'll be sending me back to the same emptiness you pulled me from." The air caught in Aoife's throat. "I could lose the house, the surname, the money, my place in this family. I won't accept losing you in silence." Aoife cried again, not from weakness, but because love of that magnitude changes the courage of the one who receives it. In the end, the truth hidden in that house wasn't discovered by investigation. It appeared because someone decided to use that secret to attack another person. The tension with Liam grew week by week. When the family solicitor, Dara Lynch, suggested removing Aoife and transferring Ayala to another family residence under proper supervision, Cillian accepted without hesitation. The justification was to protect the child. The truth was otherwise. Without Aoife and without Liam nearby, it was easier to keep buried what was buried. Aoife heard fragments of the conversation in the corridor. She didn't understand everything. She understood the essential. They were deciding Ayala's fate behind closed doors. In the study, the temperature rose quickly. Liam stood, facing his brother, the mahogany desk between them. "No one is taking Ayala away from me. You're letting everything get out of control," Cillian replied. "And you're trying to solve a problem you never admitted existed." Dara raised a hand, asking for calm. Seamus, sitting in the armchair, rubbed his forehead. Maeve leaned against the door. Cillian lost his composure. The mask fell. "You're jeopardizing everything out of attachment to a situation that doesn't even belong to you in the way you pretend, Liam." The phrase shocked everyone in the room. Aoife in the corridor leaned against the wall, her legs giving way. Liam stared at his brother with a frightening calm. "Repeat that. You heard me. Repeat it. I want everyone in this room to hear it properly." Maeve tried. "Stop, both of you. No, Mother. No more secrets. No more lies." And the truth broke through. It came in fragments, amidst Cillian's shouts, trying to justify himself, Dara trying to contain the damage, Maeve repeating, "Enough, enough, enough." With a trembling voice, Aoife pieced together the fragments of the shouting in the corridor, and the story left her in shock. Ayala's mother was named Bridin Murphy, a company employee, a simple, hard-working woman, invisible in that world. She arrived early, left late, never complained. When she got pregnant, no one protected her. When she didn't survive childbirth, no one cried in public. When no family appeared to claim the child, everything was resolved behind the scenes. Quick, clean, an entire life erased with the same coldness with which a financial statement is closed. Her name didn't appear on any document in the house. Aoife had never heard anyone pronounce it there, and Liam, the younger son, who was never the first choice for anything, who was left out of decisions, was forced to assume paternity to protect the image of the perfect heir. He swallowed the lie, signed the papers, carried the weight alone. Ayala's biological father was Cillian. Aoife leaned her head against the wall and squeezed her eyes shut. Nausea, anger, a deep sadness that rose from her stomach to her throat. She bit her lip not to make a sound. In the study, Liam spoke. He didn't shout. His voice came out firm, full of pain. "I wake up in the middle of the night when she cries. I know when she's scared. I know which toy she wants to sleep with. I learned to be a father through pain, through persistence, through error. You, Cillian, gave the blood, but you never gave presents. And for me, that settles everything." Cillian lowered his head and said nothing more. Seamus stood up. His voice trembled, but his tone was one of sentence. "You will be disinherited. Then disinherit me. You'll lose everything. I've already lost everything that wasn't worth it. Maeve cried for the first and only time, not from regret, but from defeat. From the raw recognition that the son she never prioritized was the only one with the courage to do the right thing. Cillian said the last thing, "I don't want to, and I won't dispute her custody. I just don't want a scandal." That sentence explained everything. He never loved Ayala as a daughter. To him, she was merely a danger to his image and a reminder of a past mistake. For Liam, what he felt for Ayala was pure love, a feeling he created, spending sleepless nights, learning to hold the baby the right way, and persisting even when he made mistakes. That night, with a few bags in the boot, Liam left the mansion. He didn't take an inheritance, didn't take approval, didn't take the weight of a surname that was never truly his. He carried Ayala in his arms. The girl slept with her head on his shoulder, her small hand clutching the collar of his shirt, the grey stuffed animal pressed against her chest. Her fine hair smelled of baby soap. Aoife went with him, not as an employee. She agreed to go with Liam out of love. She carried only a small bag with the little she owned, but she carried the most important thing, the desire to be with him and with Ayala. At the door, Maeve made one last attempt. She stood at the entrance, pearl necklace around her neck, arms crossed. The words trembled in the air. "You'll regret this." Liam stopped, turned his face. Ayala stirred in his arms and gripped the collar of his shirt. "Mother, I spent years trying to be chosen by the wrong family. I won't back down now that I've chosen the right one." Aoife opened the car door. Liam placed Ayala in, adjusted the buckle, checked the blanket, placed the stuffed animal against the girl's arm. His hands trembled. Aoife took one and squeezed it. His skin was cold. "It'll be all right." He met her eyes, red, tired, but clear. "I know now, I know." The car pulled out of the gate. The house lights receded. First large, then small, then nothing. Foxrock disappeared in the rearview mirror. The avenue was empty at that hour. The streetlights passed at a constant rhythm. Orange, orange, orange. In her car seat, Ayala slept peacefully. Life in the mansion was behind them. 3 years later, the three lived in a completely different way, in a place that was now theirs. A smaller house, a leafy neighborhood on Dublin's west side, a grassy garden, a veranda with hanging fern baskets that Aoife insisted on putting up. Half of them would dry out, but she'd buy another and hang it in the dead one's place, a matter of honor. A front door without a camera, a wall without trimmed ivy, a gate that opened with a simple latch. The next-door neighbor kept a rooster, and the bird crowed at 5 in the morning. Aoife complained. Liam slept right through the crowing. Toys in the hallway, crayon drawings stuck to the fridge with fruit magnets, mugs forgotten on the counter, the rug turning into a cushion fort every day after lunch, a grape juice stain on the sofa that no one could remove, and that became part of the decor. Far from the family name, Liam rebuilt his career. He worked at what he loved and lived peacefully in his home office, with the door always open to the garden. He took Ayala to school in the mornings, sometimes late, sometimes with her backpack forgotten and having to turn back. And in the late afternoon, he'd sit on the veranda with Aoife. "You left the tap dripping again?" Aoife said one Sunday, bringing 2 glasses of elderflower cordial. "I fixed it yesterday." "You fixed it badly." "Why call a plumber? I'll fix it myself." "I'm just telling you, Mr. Engineer, you don't know how to tighten a tap." He took the glass and drank. A drop of cordial ran down his chin. Aoife's thumb reached out and wiped it away, naturally, distractedly. The gesture of someone who had done it 1,000 times without thinking. In the mansion, there were 6 people to look after 1 tap, and now there's me, who's better than all 6 put together. He laughed, a real laugh, a Sunday laugh, the laugh of a man who learned to laugh late and now didn't hold back. Ayala appeared, running from the garden, her dress dirty with red earth, a long twig in her hand, hair full of dry leaves, a scraped knee from a fall that had already been cried over, cleaned, and forgotten. "Daddy, look what I found." Liam knelt down to her height. "What's that?" "A magic twig sword. The best ones are made of twigs." Aoife looked at the scene, and her throat tightened in that good way. Ayala was 4.5. She called Liam daddy with the naturalness of someone who had never needed another word. And he was, in every fever, every nightmare, every story before bed, in every hug, every telling off given with firmness and affection, in every school morning where he'd comb her hair wrong and she'd leave laughing. The biological truth was still there. One day, when she grew up, Ayala would know everything. Aoife made Liam promise, no lies, no surprises. They would tell her together at the right time, because both knew firsthand the damaged secrets wrought within a family. "Daddy, be the monster." What monster? The silly monster that loses to me. Liam stood up, made the most hideous face he could manage, and ran after her around the garden. Ayala screamed and guffawed, dodging the pots, tripping on the grass, twig held high in the air. Aife stood on the veranda with her glass in hand, watching the man she'd first known drenched in milk at the most tense dinner of his life, now kneeling on the grass, pretending to lose to a 4-year-old girl's magic twig. When he returned, breathless, grass on his knee, leaves in his hair, Aife was standing, waiting. He wrapped his arm around her waist and rested his forehead against hers. "I'd do it all again," he said softly. "Everything. Every loss, every fight, every closed door." Aife picked a leaf from his hair. "Even the bottle on the suit? Especially the bottle on the suit." She laughed, her eyes glinting in the sun. "That was the first miracle of that house, the milk on the suit. No, someone facing you down, and you, instead of destroying them, finding the path to true love there." He swallowed hard and squeezed her hand. Ayala came running back and hugged both their legs, the twig poking Liam's shin, her dirty dress smearing Oife's trousers. Family, a hug. Liam picked the girl up. Oife came close. The three stood there in the garden, under the Sunday sun, with the tap dripping inside and the pots dying on the veranda, and the neighbor's rooster already preparing its next 5 o'clock crow. A family, not born perfect, without a manual, without anyone's approval, but chosen day by day, argument by argument, with the rarest courage that exists, destined to stay. Dear reader, if you've made it this far, you're probably feeling that pleasant tightness in your chest, the one we get when a story touches parts of the soul we didn't even know existed. This story was born from a long-held restlessness of mine, what it truly means to belong somewhere. How many times do we give up who we are to fit into spaces that were never made for us? And more importantly, what happens when someone decides they will no longer bow down, no longer accept crumbs disguised as generosity? Aife and Liam taught me something as I wrote. It's not about the nanny and the boss. It's not about Cinderella. It's about two people shattered by different worlds who meet in the only place where social class means nothing. In pure care, in love that asks no permission, in the courage to choose the family we build instead of the one we inherit. I wanted you to feel every humiliation Aife swallowed, every time Liam raised his voice to defend her, knowing he would pay dearly every impossible decision, because real life is like that. There's no soundtrack telling you the beautiful moment has arrived. We choose in the middle of chaos, with fear, with no guarantees. And do you know what moves me most in this story? It's Ayala, a child who never asked to be born into all that confusion, but who became everyone's moral compass. She chose Awif's lap. She chose Liam's clumsy hug. And in this simple choice of a baby, we see the rawest truth. Real love doesn't hide, doesn't disguise itself, doesn't explain itself. It just happens. If you're reading this and have ever been the person who didn't fit in, who had to prove every day that they deserved to be there, who heard venom wrapped in politeness, I see you, and I hope this story reminds you. Your dignity is not negotiable. It never was. And if you're reading this and recognized a bit of Liam in yourself, someone who grew up in spaces of privilege but never truly felt they belonged, who carries the weight of expectations they didn't ask for, know that starting over is not failure. Sometimes, losing everything is the only way to discover what truly matters. Thank you for reading this far. Thank you for giving a chance to this crooked, improbable, and absolutely true family that was born in the midst of chaos. We'll meet in the next story. Until then, take care of that heart of yours. It deserves the bravest choices you can make. So, what did you think of the story? Leave your opinion in the comments. We love to know what you think. Don't forget to like the video to support us and subscribe to the channel. Until next time.